was sitting at a dinner table looking at a man who honestly believed he had me cornered. For over 2 decades, I had deliberately kept my life quiet and simple, blending into the background while running a multi-million-dollar logistics empire. My oldest friend used to say that the ultimate victory isn't about making a grand scene, but about letting your adversaries think they have one, only to show them they never stood a chance. As I looked across the white tablecloth at the expensive cream-colored envelope containing decades of hidden family history, I realized the moment had finally come to change the rules of their game. To understand how I ended up in this high-end restaurant, you have to understand who I am. I am Arthur Vance, and for 22 years, I have been the sole owner of Vance Logistics, a massive industrial conglomerate employing thousands of people across the country. Yet, if you saw me in town, you would never guess it because I drive a beat-up old truck, wear a basic watch, and spend my weekends working in my garden wearing faded flannel shirts. I have always preferred anonymity over public attention, finding immense comfort in knowing my wealth is completely invisible to the average person. My daughter Chloe, however, loves life under the bright lights, and 3 years ago, she brought home a young man named Preston Albright. Preston was sharp, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with the supreme confidence of someone who had never experienced a single failure in his life. I want to be fair here because Preston was not a malicious person, just highly ambitious and accustomed to the finer things. After running a private background check on him, I saw his business instincts were genuinely exceptional, so I made a decision that surprised even myself by quietly ensuring he was hired as the Chief Executive Officer of Vance Logistics. Preston had absolutely no idea that he was actually working for his girlfriend's father. As far as he was concerned, a prestigious executive search firm had scouted him, and he had secured the corporate position entirely through his own professional merits. Chloe knew the truth, of course, and while she found my secret ownership slightly chaotic, she accepted it as my peculiar way of keeping the family safe. For over a year, Preston ran the corporation beautifully, which genuinely pleased me, until everything shifted on a rainy evening when he called to invite me to an exclusive dinner with his parents. The restaurant was the kind of establishment where the menus do not feature prices and the waitstaff treats you with calculated reverence. I intentionally wore my casual flannel shirt, and when Preston met me at the entrance in a designer suit, he handled my appearance with genuine grace. Inside, his parents, Julian and Madeline Albright, were already waiting for us with smiles that felt far too warm to be authentic. In my decades of business, I have learned that individuals who are hiding something always overcompensate with excessive politeness, and Julian's double-handed handshake confirmed my suspicions immediately. We made polite conversation for nearly 40 minutes while Preston discussed recent corporate victories and Julian asked condescending questions about my simple lifestyle. Then, right as the main entrees arrived, Julian reached into his custom blazer and placed a thick, expensive envelope directly onto the table between us. Madeline took a slow sip of her wine, while Preston suddenly looked down at his plate, completely avoiding my gaze. Julian leaned forward, his friendly demeanor vanishing as he told me they had been waiting a very long time to discuss my past mistakes and settle an old family grievance. Looking at that envelope, I realized 22 years of silence had finally caught up with me, bringing back the ghost of my former business partner, Lawrence Albright. Back in the late 80s, Lawrence and I were young, ambitious, and utterly broke when we started our very first manufacturing venture together. For 4 years, we built the business from the ground up, but I ignored the subtle warning signs that Lawrence was quietly draining our corporate accounts. By the time I discovered his betrayal, he had stolen enough capital to fund a rival operation using my private client lists and personal industry relationships. Instead of reacting with loud anger, I spent months compiling undeniable evidence of his fraud, forgery, and embezzlement before offering him a definitive ultimatum. I gave him the choice to sign over his remaining shares and disappear quietly, or face a decade in federal prison. Lawrence chose to walk away and later passed away in poverty, a bitter truth he twisted when recounting the story to his younger brother, Julian. Julian had grown up believing a completely fabricated narrative about a ruthless man who had ruined his brother, and he had been planning his revenge ever since. Julian demanded my immediate resignation from the company and a massive financial payout as restitution, threatening to ruin Preston's career if I refused to comply. I turned my attention to Preston and asked him directly how long he had known about his father's true intentions. Preston looked visibly shaken, his face filled with genuine panic as he admitted he only learned about the old family feud after he and Chloe became serious. He claimed his father told him the corporate position was a perfect opportunity to get close to me and reclaim what their family had rightfully lost. Madeline tried to diffuse the tension by placing her hand on mine, suggesting we handle this quietly since we were practically family now. I smiled, removed her hand, and pulled my own small white envelope from my flannel shirt pocket, placing it gently on the table. I explained that Lawrence's personal journals were incomplete because individuals who want to play the victim rarely keep the pages that document their own crimes. My envelope contained original bank statements, wire transfers to offshore accounts, and signed affidavits from Lawrence's own accountant proving his massive financial fraud. Julian stared at the documents as the color drained from his face, his grand plan collapsing before his eyes as the undeniable truth of his brother's actions was revealed. He accused me of destroying Lawrence, but I calmly reminded him that Lawrence had ruined himself through greed and deception. Julian sank back into his chair, the arrogant confidence completely gone, replaced by a hollow look of grief and realization. I then turned back to Preston, who was watching the entire exchange in absolute silence, looking completely detached from the confident executive he usually was. I told Preston to listen to me carefully, not as his prospective father-in-law, but as the man who truly controlled his professional destiny. I revealed that the executive search firm that had hunted him was entirely under my payroll, and the board of directors he reported to answered directly to me. I explained that Vance Logistics belonged completely to me, meaning he had spent the last 14 months sitting in an office and signing contracts that I personally authorized. Preston stared at me in absolute shock, his mind completely unable to process the fact that the quiet man in the flannel shirt was the architect of his entire world. Preston asked me why I had done all of this, his voice barely a whisper against the sudden quiet of the restaurant. I looked at him with genuine sincerity and told him I did it because he was brilliant at his job, and I wanted him to succeed on his own merits, independent of his father's ancient malice. I gave Julian his envelope back and told him the past was officially settled, and any further hostility would mean the immediate end of his son's career. True strength isn't about loud confrontations, it is about holding all the cards and choosing to build a future instead of destroying it. Preston remained with the corporation, finally free from the heavy burden of his family's bitter history, while Julian never spoke of the dead again. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do for the people you care about is to quietly dismantle the traps laid by their past. I still drive my old truck and water my garden in my faded flannel shirt, completely content with my quiet life. Living well is certainly an excellent outcome, but knowing you protected your family while holding the absolute truth is the greatest victory of all.